Yes, I will start as soon as it reaches 200. So we are at 192. Let's see whether we reach 200. All right, I think it's time to start. We are 1 minute behind. I'm going to be very short because there is a lot of material to be covered in this special webinar. So I'm very happy to welcome all of you to this special webinar as that is part of the webinar series, joint webinar series of ESCAP, ADB, ICC, and WCO. It's a special webinar because it's longer than the other ones we've organized. Normally it's about 1 hour and a half. This one is 3 hours, and there's 3 one-hour components. And I will explain to you why it is that way. And I was checking on how many webinars we've organized as part of the joint series on accelerating cross-border paperless trade so far. So we started this during COVID-19, and then this is actually the 23rd webinar in the series, right? And so I'm very happy to see that we have still good participation and interactions with the participants and the speaker in the series. So as long as we keep getting this, I think we will keep doing it. I'm the chief of trade policy and facilitation at ESCAP. My name is Yann Duval. I forgot to mention this at the beginning. And so the reason why this is a special webinar again is because we are going to take this opportunity to present 3 guides that have been developed under the framework agreement on facilitation of cross-border paperless trade in Asia and the Pacific, the CTPA. I think many of you probably are familiar with this. This is a UN treaty that entered into force in 2021 and that is fully dedicated to accelerating trade digitalization. So since the entry into force, the countries have worked hard together with experts to develop guidance material. And so this is the first time the countries came together and adopted 3 guides. So again, on 3 documents that they thought were priority documents to advance paperless trade and trade digitalization. So certificate of origin, phytosanitary certificates, and also invoices. So as you can see, it's a blend of government documents and as well as commercial documents. I think the next one on the list of the countries, as far as I can tell from the discussion under the CPTA, is actually bill of lading. One thing I'd like to do before I give the floor back to Tengfei and all the experts is to thank very much everyone who participated in the development of the guides. So that includes essentially all the speakers that are going to be the 20 speakers we have in the webinar, but it also includes many more speakers as well as a number of government officials that participate in the working groups meetings that develop the webinars. So big thank you to all, and I leave the floor to the experts for the rest of the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jan, for setting the scene, and it's really very useful to provide the background information on this webinar.
Вот здесь говорит последовательный перевод здесь, но
So my name is Tengfei Wang. I've been working together with Yang at the ESCAP. And today I'm really honored to moderate the discussion. Indeed, I think I also had a great pleasure to work with all the experts gathered here today in preparing for those 3 guides. I think in the process of preparing the guide, some started drafting the guide, and some experts, review the guide, provide the input. I think that today is really a good time to disseminate those guides. So as Jan mentioned, today's webinar is pretty long. We have about 3-hour session. We are going to cover 3 different topics: proof of origin, phytosanitary certificate, and invoice. And for each topic, we are going to spend about 1 hour. First, we will introduce the guide to the audience, and then we will invite the expert to provide some comments. And then the floor will be open. And for any of you, if you have any question in the process while you're listening to the presentations, listen to the expert, please feel free to send your question to chat, and I think we will pick up some questions and invite expert to answer your question. So the webinar will be recorded, and I think in the end, if the speakers are comfortable, we will probably share with public. So that's the arrangement. And also just want to mention that the English-Russian interpretation is available. So for those who are, if you are more comfortable with the Russian language, especially from Central Asia, please take advantage of the opportunity. So with this, I think we move to the first topic. Actually, before that, it's quite important thing to mention to you that we really encourage very effective learning. We hope that you not only benefit from attending this webinar, reading the guide, but also have a good reflection after this webinar. Therefore, we arranged the online quiz for you. For those of you attended all 3 sessions today, after this webinar, we will send an email to you, invite you to take the online quiz. And if you pass the online quiz, it's a multiple choice answers, and you will be awarded a certificate. So that's the way how we encourage you to really, benefit from the learning process. So with this, I think first we move to the first topic, the proof of origin. I have a great pleasure to invite Professor Jisoo Yi to introduce this guide. And Jisoo is the main author of this guide. And Jisoo is Associate Professor from the Department of International Trade at Dankook University, Republic of Korea. So my office first will play the video, and afterward we are going to invite 4 experts to provide further comments. Yes, Quinnock.
Hi everyone, I'm Jisoo from Dankook University, Republic of Korea. I'm happy to introduce our guide for digital proof of origin implementation. Today, I will show you our key models and strategic steps for paperless trade. Let's get started. This guide has 2 main purposes. First, to present digital solutions for origin certification, which we call models. And second, to help policymakers choose the best ones for their needs. Our guide covers both preferential and non-preferential proof of origin. We designed this guide for policymakers in trade ministries, customs agencies, and chambers of commerce. It is also a key resource for any authority involved in origin management. Most importantly, our work follows global standards like revised Kyoto Convention and WCO guidelines. I will not go into every definition here, but I want to highlight that all terms in this guide match WCO guidelines. This guide shows several models for preferential certificate of origin. First, web-based models. Sri Lanka uses this with support through its Department of Commerce. Second, data transition model. This includes systems like the one between China and Republic of Korea. It also covers regional solutions like Asian single window. Third, exporter-based model. Here, the exporter sends declaration to importing country. A good example is the EU's REC system. Fourth, importer-based model. A typical example is New Zealand. In this case, the importer is responsible for submitting data. For each model, our guide analyzes both strengths and weaknesses. So, how should a country choose the right model? Our guide lists the key factors for this decision. The first step is to check trading partners with whom a country has active free trade agreements. Look at Kyrgyzstan, for example. Their choice depends on specific agreements with partners listed on this slide. Second, adopting model must follow legal rules in those free trade agreements. For example, under Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, Article 3.17 says a COO should come from a designated authority. However, Article 3.18 says origin declaration should also be accepted. In this case, Model 1, 4, or 5 can be used. Also, Model 3 and 4 work under RCEP because Article 3.29 allows electronic data exchange. However, to use these, you need a memorandum of understanding. Some agreements still require paper-based COOs. To go paperless there, we may need to update the traded terms through official talks. This process can be a long and complex task. Third, we recommend that countries choose more liberal options whenever possible, like Model 4 or 5. This approach matches WCO guidelines perfectly. WCO update from June 2018 encourages maximum use of self-certification by producers, exporters, or importers. This is because preferential trade is growing and we need faster trade facilitation. By considering domestic business needs, these models make origin procedure much simpler. Also, we have strong evidence to support this. Recent studies, including work by Krivili and Inama in 2021 and ADB in 2024, show that liberal approaches like self-declaration lead to much higher utilization rate by traders. In short, when the system is easy to use, more businesses actually enjoy FTA benefits. This makes the whole trade environment more active and effective. Fourth, we must think about long-term cost. A clear cost analysis is very important. Generally, Model 4, 5, and Model 1 are cheaper than Model 2 and 3. Data exchange models are best when trade volume is very high. In that case, efficiency is worth the cost. But for countries with lower trade activity, expensive systems might not be the best choice. The savings might not cover the cost of setting up and maintaining them. So, the solution must fit the scale of a country's trade. Finally, we must look at what traders really need. Success depends on whether traders actually use these digital solutions. If a system is too hard or complicated, traders will go back to paper. They might even stop using FTA benefits if it's too much trouble. To avoid this, we need to talk to traders often, not just once. We should co-design new solutions with them. We start by mapping the current as-is process, then everyone works together on the future to be processed. Last point is to use existing guides and low-cost solutions. Guidance from WCO and other international groups is a key for smooth, harmonized paperless trade. These resources help us follow global standards. For example, WCO and Korea Customs Service recently started interconnectivity framework for certificates of origin. This study offers a valuable framework for building digital models. It covers essential parts like business processes, ECO datasets, legal rules, and technical needs. While some parties focus on high-tech data exchange, others with lower trade volumes can choose more cost-effective options. For instance, eligible countries can use existing platforms for generalized system of preferences. These ready-to-use tools provide a great starting point without high cost. Now, how do we put these factors into practice? First step for CPTA parties is to find clear opportunities for collaboration. To do this, countries should review existing free trade agreements that include at least 2 CPTA members. These agreements provide the legal starting point for digitalization. Please look at Table 5 on the slide. This table shows bilateral agreements currently in place between any 2 CPTA parties. By using this matrix, countries can see exactly where they can begin implementing paperless trade models together. Beyond the bilateral deals, we should also explore larger trade agreements that include at least one CPTA party. As you see here, the landscape is very fragmented. Currently, there is no single agreement that covers all or even most CPTA members. This means we lack a unified framework for proof of origin in our region, including Central Asia. Because of this fragmented environment, countries often have to follow different rules for different partners. This is why our guide is so important. It provides a common direction to help you navigate these overlapping and separate agreements. Now, let's look at models for non-preferential certificate of origin. We identified 3 primary models here. First is web-based electronic exchange model. A great example is the platform by China Council for the Promotion of International Trade. It allows for fast digital issuance. Second is the centralized international verification platform model. ICC system is now used by 35 countries worldwide. It provides a single point to verify the validity of a certificate. Third is bilateral or regional data exchange model. Currently, the only example is the data exchange between Republic of Korea and Taiwan Province of China. Just like with preferential trade, our guide analyzes specific strengths and weaknesses of each model. To conclude, let's look at key points for selecting non-preferential models. WCO recommendation is very clear on this. Customs authorities should avoid asking for non-preferential COOs for tasks unrelated to origin control, like customs valuation. Even when enforcement measures apply, origin proof should only be required when high certainty is absolutely essential. In other words, our goal is to minimize administrative work for traders unless it is strictly necessary. However, when you must request a non-preferential COO, we suggest using established international tools like ICC solutions. These existing platforms provide an efficient way to verify certificates without building complex new systems. This concludes our summary of the models and strategic recommendations found in our guide. We hope this guide serves as a valuable roadmap for your paperless trade journey. Thank you very much for your attention.
All right. Thank you so much, Jisoo for excellent presentation. Very clear, I think really structured. Now, after your presentation, I'm going to invite a few experts to provide comments. As I mentioned earlier, those experts also in the process of preparing the guide also provide invaluable feedback and review. So in this panel, we have the first from WCO, World Customs Organization. It's Chunxiao Xu. Chunxiao is a technical attaché from WCO. And the second speaker is Nitas Pulachai from ASEAN Secretariat and expert in ASEAN Single Window, among other expertise. And we also have Daniel White, Dan. Dan is from New Zealand, Fantara. I think Dan will provide a lot of perspective from industry. And finally, last definitely not least, we have Mr. Shenghun Ha or Rama Ha, I think known for many experts as Rama. And he's a director from KittyNet. So we really have a speaker from very different background. What I'm going to do is really, I'm going to ask the speakers the same questions. It doesn't mean the speaker have to cover all the questions. They may pick up some questions that they feel comfortable or good at in answering. The same question is, so after hearing Jisoo's presentation, what are your key reflections on the guide? And also based on your experience, could you share some practical examples or lessons on implementing paperless solution on origin certification? Also, it would be very good if you provide some recommendations to the countries on way forward. It would be really big plus if you can provide some comments such as quick win for the country. So again, I mean, there's many questions. The speakers, please feel free to pick up some questions you feel comfortable. So with this, I think first I'm going to give the floor to Chunxiao from WCO. I think as we heard well, when Jisoo present the guide, we try our best to align the recommendation with WCO recommendation because we are very convinced that WCO is really authority in origin certification and doesn't make sense that we create another system in Asia Pacific. So with this, Chunxiao, please take the floor and share your perspective.
Thank you, moderator. Good afternoon, everyone, and also good morning from Brussels. I'm Chunxiao Xu from the World Customs Organization, and thank you for inviting me to join this webinar as a panelist for this session. As you just mentioned that during the development of the guide, WCO also provided the technical support and contributed the latest findings and observations to this guide. So today I would like to also share a few key reflections as requested. The WCO initiated the latest work in the digitalization of the certificate of origin at the year 2022 by conducting a survey among the customs administrations to better understand the current state of play in this area. And a total of 84 customs administrations responded. The result showed that more than half of the respondents currently are using both paper certificate of origin and electronic certificate of origin. So this indicates that many administrations are in the transitional period, gradually moving towards a digital solution. And also one of the key practices identified in the survey is the establishment of the mechanisms between parties to a free trade agreement to exchange the electronic data on proof of origin. 22 members across Asia, Europe, Latin America, and Africa have reported that they have implemented IT systems for this exchange of origin certification data. And these practices also reflected in this guide as Model 2 and Model 3, the bilateral and multilateral data transmission, as just Jinsoo Yi mentioned for the preferential certificate of origin. So from the WCO to support members in this transaction, WCO has developed a tool on interconnectivity framework for certificate of origin. And the tool cover the key element, the business process model data set to be exchanged, and also legal framework and compliance, technological specification and requirement. And these key elements are aimed to facilitate, help also facilitate members to implement or better implement the data exchange to facilitate smoother and more efficient exchange of structured origin data between the exporting and the importing countries. And the publication has already launched on the WCO website in September 2025, and it is also referenced in this guide. And I would also want to share with you that WCO recently also developed an e-learning module on certificate of origin interconnectivity. It is a 2 hours module, and it is also available on the WCO website Click platform. And currently, we can also see a growing number of countries and regional entities are developing such interconnectivity system, either on bilateral or multilateral basis. For example, we can see in Asia Pacific, for example, China, Japan, Korea, India, well, New Zealand, and quite a number of ASEAN members have also implemented data exchange. And in Africa, such initiative to enable the data transmission are also being developed under the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, and the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. And in Europe, similar development are also taking place under the Pan-Euro-Mediterranean Convention. So this, I would say, it's a quite global trend related to these practices. And another key reflections, I would like to turn to another type of proof of origin, the self-declaration, as also included in this guide. Many trade agreements nowadays have already introduced self-declaration systems. So these self-declaration allow exporter, producer, or importer to declare the origin of goods themselves. And according to the WCO surveys conducted in 2022, 73% of responding members have implemented both certificate of origin and self-declaration. And this clearly indicates a shift towards more flexible and also trade-driven approaches. And of course, digital platform also play a key role in enabling this process. They will allow exporters to register online and maintain digital records, and some platform will even allow submission of the document. As also highlighted in the guide under Model 4, one example is the European Union's registered exporter system under the generalized system of preferences, which support self-certification. And in addition, several countries and regional entities also are exploring other digital solutions. For example, China Customs has developed a unified platform integrated with the national single window, enabling the exchange of self-declaration or structured data with the partner countries. And similarly, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, also have a central e-hub system facilitate the exchange of declaration of origin among its member states. So these systems not only facilitate across access to preferential treatment, but also contribute to smoother and more efficient international trade flow. And to support this development, WCO organized a global forum on origin self-declaration actually last month in February 2026, during which members and also regional entities shared a lot of practices during the forum. And all the presentations and along with the summary report, have already been published on the WCO website. So in conclusion, shortly, I just want to highlight that there's a clear global trend towards digitalization and interconnectivity. And also WCO is ready also to support this trend. We have developed quite a number of tools and also the guidance. Okay, thank you, moderator. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Chun Xiao. I think you also, you brought us the global perspective in applying the different solutions on proof of origin, and also keep us updated on what's happening at the WCO. So once again, really thank you. I think in your intervention, you also give example of ASEAN single window. I think this really lend itself well to the second speaker in my list. I would like to invite Quinitas to introduce ASEAN practice and how ASEAN actually manage the paperless solution on proof of origin. So Nitas, if you are there.
Thank you, Fei.
Yeah.
And good morning and good afternoon to all the participants. First of all, I would like to congratulate you and ESCAP to come up with the very useful and practical guide for implementing the proof of origin. Back to my topics, right? When I see the presentation on this guide, it's very practical and aligned on what has been done in ASEAN. When I saw the model, the 5 model that has been identified, as well as the use case in the presentations, we can see the practical way to implement the proof of origins. Allow me to bring up the ASEAN single window as a use case. When we implement the ASEAN single windows, to be honest, when we implement the proof of origin to be used in the ASEAN, right? I think that the topics. First of all, we have to think about what is the format of the proof of origin that can be accepted under the ASEAN FTA. So we have to go back to the ASEAN FTA under the rule of origin chapters. What is the data format of the proof of origin that can be accepted? And based on the current practice, we can accept 3 formats. The hard copy of the certificate of origin, the paper-based one, the electronic certificate of origin, and lastly, the self-certifications generated by the authorized exporters. And by having the agreement on the format that can be accepted under the FTA, that will lead to the further discussion what is the data transmission models to be applied in order to allow the transmission of the agreed format of the proof of origin. For the ASEANs, we have the initiatives named ASEAN Single Windows, which is a network of the national single window of all the members that link together to allow the exchange of the trade administration document, including the certificate of origin. So you may see that for the ASEAN practice, we create the IT system under the same standard for all the members to ensure that all the system in the same network can talk in the same language in order to transmit information. And secondly, the IT system not totally only for the CO data is created to facilitate any trade administration document in the long terms, while the ECO is a very first document that we exchange. So I think that the practice that we are doing at the moment, so we do the investment, but the investment is reusable, not only used for ECO, but going to be with the other document. For example, the ESPS related certificates that we already implemented, some of them. Maybe also electronic custom declaration that we already exchange among the ASEAN countries. And lastly, when we agree on technical solution, I think the last component that we have to agree among the member is the data structure of the document. ECO, under the ASEAN FTA, we have a long discussion to come up with the agreed data format. For sure, we derive the data format from the hard copies, but at the same time, we will need to apply the data model standard. For the ASEAN ECO, most standard adopted from the UNCFACS, UN Center for the Trade Facilitation and e-business. And that is the baseline that we use to develop the data structure of the ECO. And last but not least, as I mentioned before, that the document exchange through the single windows, not only ECO, but many of them, right? So the data structure that we use for the document exchange in this environment, we have to apply the headers to allow the routing mechanism. So the single window will read the headers and understand where to route this document to. For example, the ECO will be routed to the custom agencies, while the other certificates will be routed to the proper agencies. And also, the common headers can be used for the statistic report generations for the policymakers. I believe I share some ideas and some practice of the ASEAN single windows, and I hope that will be useful for all the participants to understand, and also how our practice align with this guide. And I think that's all from my side. Thank you. I return the floor back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It does. It's I think ASEAN example. ASEAN journey is a very long journey from the ASEAN single window until the time they start exchanging document. It took a very long time. I think many sub-regions can learn from ASEAN experience. Thank you very much for the insight. So with this, I think I will turn to the third speaker in this panel, Dan Wright from Fantara. I remember we have a lot of discussion in preparing the guide. In the end, we think all solutions need to benefit the trader, because ultimately they are the user to the service. So with this, Dan, I give the floor to you.
Kia ora, Ting Fei. Well, thank you everybody for allowing me the opportunity to speak. And yes, I bring a good perspective from the private sector. I also bring a unique perspective because I'm also an ex-customs officer as well. So I understand what the regulator wants to see and validate, and also know from a trader's point of view what we want to see. I think the key thing really from paperless trade is, from a trader's point of view, we want to see it literally paperless. We want the paper to disappear and be as resilient as possible. And the two key things that we're looking at, and you hear customs globally and other agencies talk about globally, is two key metrics: sustainability and resilience. Now, when we think about sustainability, I think of the fact that we, as in Fonterra, who export to over our dairy products to over 100 countries in the world, spend on average of $3 million sending paper around the world on airplanes. Not very good metric when we're talking about sustainability measures. And there's two real key documents that we still find are sending out on pieces of paper. The certificate of origin and the phyto or health certificate are the two main pieces of paper that we're sending out around the world on aircraft. And when I think about resilience, I think about COVID-19 and what lessons we really learned out of that when the world basically shut down and we couldn't get anything around. Our documents were stuck. They couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't get our letters of credit to banks around the world. We couldn't get our documentation, our invoices and our certificates around the world because aircraft were grounded. A lot of people said to us at the time that there are lessons that we learn from this and we will become a lot more resilient. But in the current conflict that we're seeing in the Middle East, we still can't get our documents into the Middle East because aircraft are incredibly hindered at the moment from, as you would expect, from the airspace. We have consignments that have arrived in the Middle East that we can't clear because we can't get pieces of paper up to those parts of the markets. So a real key learning that people should be thinking about as a policymaker is, how do we take these learnings and how do we become more adaptable? What are the lessons that we can learn from this? And when I think about paper-based certificates of origin or declarations of origin or proof of origin, From a trader point of view, I spend probably 80% of my time dealing with customs or regulation issues based on paper-based certificates of origin or proof of origin. And almost never is it around the actual rule of origin. It's around immaterial things such as the format of the document, the validity of the document, whether you've used a black pen instead of a blue pen, and it's become really immaterial. It's become quite a bit of a hindrance when we think about these are around preferential trade agreements, right? We're thinking of the word preferential trade, and we're adding complexity to this where there is really no benefit to that. A significant step, though, moving forward was the acceptance of many economies for accepting PDF documents. We have to understand that not every economy is as advanced as we see other economies around data exchanges and digital solutions. An initial first step is just being able to accept a PDF format, and you have to commend some of these countries and economies for getting to that first stage, and they should be encouraged to go even further in that. During my time in New Zealand Customs, I was lucky enough to be able to oversee the project, which was the Joint Electronic Verification System project between New Zealand Customs and China, where we actually shared certificate of origin data. Now, this was a transmission of data only one way because, as you would have seen in scenario number 5, New Zealand doesn't actually ask for certificate of origin or preferential certificates of origin or data. So we transmit the data one way into China. Now, you have to commend the economies that do this, because what that does give us from a preferential trade point of view is it standardizes everything. The data is standard. We get no regional interpretation issues like we do in other economies. It is a great step moving forward, and China and many other economies that have these data exchange programs should be commended because it does truly benefit trade. But it does have its flaws. It is an incredibly expensive upfront capital cost for governments, in particular in the current economic environments, to establish these. Also, not all economies are dealing with the same IT systems. So you have the fear and the concern of running different separate parallel systems that have different IT sort of platforms where they run these systems, right? Which becomes incredibly difficult to maintain and to manage. The other hindrance that we find in this is that it's as good as it is, it's incredibly inflexible. It puts into perception that the exporter and the importer always have a direct relationship, or the intent that they always have a direct relationship. Now, what we do find is, in many cases, the supply chain disruption is a key thing, and we may have containers that are left behind in places like TPP or Singapore. It doesn't necessarily match the data that actually left New Zealand that ends up in China. You always have to have a workaround and those sorts of things. So as good as those programs are, they do have their genuine commercial and supply chain hindrances when we have these sorts of programs. And which leads me into really the final part of what I want to talk about, which is that Pillar 5. New Zealand has been an advocate of importer proof of origin for over 30 years. And many trade agreements that New Zealand has signed up to, New Zealand always promotes paperless or importer certification or exporter certification programs. And the real true testament behind that is when you look at what traders actually use, in particular in the ASEAN region. New Zealand has the ASEAN Australia-New Zealand trade agreement, which still it is moving through the second protocol around digitizing that program. But most New Zealand traders, when they trade under a bilateral agreement with Thailand and Malaysia, they never use or don't tend to use the ASEAN Australia-New Zealand trade agreement. The main reason is under the bilateral agreement with Thailand and under the bilateral agreement with Malaysia, it's an importer self-certification program going both ways. The declaration, the exporter or the importer makes a declaration statement in their packing list or in their invoice. It goes through, no worries. And we almost never have a verification issue related to that. Yet we consistently have verification and credibility audits coming through on these paper documents issued by competent authorities, which is ironic in itself. So as I sort of wrap this up, look, I really appreciate everybody sort of listening to the private sector view on this one. And really the key thing from here, from our point of view, we understand that there is a way forward that customs agencies and regulators in particular want assurance that these documents are honest and they're valid. but also when you look at what other trade agreements have, and we really need to have a look at the data on those trade agreements that have exporter self-certification programs and importer self-certifications. Is there a proliferation in illicit trade because of those? I would say not, because in most data that we get out of our trade agreements, our bilateral trade agreements that have these programs, you almost never see any data showing that there is erroneous preferential trade agreement sort of status being claimed out of that. So, Team Faye, I really appreciate you allowing us the time to talk about this, and happy to answer any questions later on if anybody's got any.
Thank you very much, Dan, for your insight. I think there's a lot of information there. I think what I jot down, mentioned the importance of sustainability and the resilience. I think resilience currently it's become more important given the current geopolitical situation. But it's also interesting to imagine that whether black pen or blue pen, matters. The very practical side. So it's very insightful and also very interesting. Thank you, Dan. So finally, for this panel, I'm going to invite Rama Ha. I think for anyone who knows trade facilitation, I think you probably know Rama. Doesn't require my introduction. Rama is the director from KTNet, Korean Trade Network. Rama, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, moderator Deng Fei, and Professor Jis for excellent presentation. And also I thank to ESCAP for organizing this meaningful workshop and inviting me. I'd like to begin by welcoming the new guide for digital proof of origin implementation. It is very useful especially because it doesn't assume that all countries must begin from the same level of readiness. The guide shows that especially for electronic non-preferential certificate of origin, implementation can take place different forms, from web-based issuance with a QR code or reference numbers and online verification to more complex bilateral or regional electronic data exchange models. It also makes clear that the more advanced models require much heavier legal and institutional and technical coordination. From Korea's perspective, I'd like to focus on one practical lesson from implementation experience. Korea has practical experience with bilateral electronic exchange of non-preferential certificate of origin or NPCO with the Taiwan province of China. We also have broader experience with electronic certificate of origin exchange, the exchange of the origin data through trade agreements with partners such as China and India. From that experience, our conclusion is clear. Bilateral exchange is possible and it has lots of benefits, but bilateralism is not easy to scale. Even when one arrangement works, each new arrangement requires legal review, institutional coordination, technical alignments, operational procedure, and trust building between the authorities on both sides. The guides reflects this same reality by noting that bilateral or regional exchange of non-preferential CO data requires direct agreements, legal recognition, and significant intergovernmental coordination. So in my view, the real challenge for the NPCO is not simply digitization. The real challenge is how to move beyond costly bilateral arrangements towards a scalable and cost-effective model called cross-border recognition, or I would say cross-border recognition at scale. So for preferential proof of origin, recognition is usually embedded in the legal framework of the trade agreements. But for non-preferential CO, the legal foundation is much weaker. This is why the wider adoption becomes more difficult. If every pair of trading partner must negotiate separately how to recognize electronic NPCOs, the process becomes slow, costly, and burdensome. This guide also points to this problem. For non-preferential CO, MPCO, the importing country vary in what they accept and as bilateral or regional arrangements support recognition. So here, that is why I believe that the framework agreement on facilitation of cross-border paperless trade in Asia and the Pacific is important. For non-preferential CO, what we need is not only a national digital issuance. What we need is a broader framework that can support the legal and institutional basis for cross-border recognition. At this point, I'd like to mention the success case of e-apostille as a benchmarking case. This e-apostille begin with a simpler proven structure, a designated competent authority, temporal evident issuance, a unique identifier, and publicly accessible e-register that allows receiving side to independently verify authenticity in real time. So this is a lower threshold model that can already deliver value. So for example, a QR-based, the QR code back the paper MPCO linked to the authoritative registry can provide a practical entry point. This guide similarly notes that web-based non-preferential CEO system can use a QR code or reference number with the verification portals while prioritizing the authenticity and security at the immediate real-time data exchange. So finally, looking further ahead, I think we should also keep an eye on the UNTP, the United Nations Transparency Protocol, kind of a future reference for cross-border paperless trade. The interesting part of the UNTP that is it is not a protocol, not a centralized platform. The key principle is of the UNTP is that we shall allow each supply chain actor to choose its own balance between transparency and confidentiality while keeping the data ownership. So I think it is highly relevant for future direction of cross-border paperless trade. I believe that the UNTP is not an immediate solution, but can be an important future direction. So I'd like to close my intervention, emphasizing that for non-preferential CEO, the real issue is not the cross-border. The real issue is the cross-border recognition in a scalable and cost-effective way, and why the framework agreement matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rama. I think always very insightful. I think you emphasize the importance about being able to scale up. I think some solutions bilateral, they are effective, but it's very difficult to scale up. Yeah, and also you point out some, I think, way forward in terms of non-preferential certificate origin. I think certainly under the framework agreement, I think we can really work closely together in this to identify good, effective solutions on recognition. I think given the time available, there are many questions. I don't think we can answer many of those questions. But I want to invite all the panelists to look at the question. If you think of some of the question, you can pick up and answer very quickly within 1 or 2 minutes. Would you volunteer to pick up any question? It's under Q&A. I think now I'm seeing about 13 questions. But I mean, apparently we really don't have a lot of time to answer those questions. So what I want is each panelist, maybe pick up one question. The ideas we give some quick answer, and then and we probably stop about in several minutes time because we need to get ready for second panel. So any panelists voluntarily pick up any question to give some sort of quick answer?
I think, Faye, I can answer Saeed Ahmed's one if you like.
Sure. Go ahead, Dan, please.
So, Mr. Ahmed, you mentioned while looking at the certificate of origin self-certification, the relationship between them can be elaborated. I 100% agree with you. One of the key pieces of information that we get from some regulators and issuers in particular in ASEAN is that there is more of a trust mechanism because self-certifying coming into the country, there's a trust that the reciprocating country has provided the right information that they can trust. But then there's also an element that they need to make sure that the credible information coming from their economy going out is credible and validated, right? So one of the key things in there is around an education piece, right? So if the trade agreement rules are complicated, then they've designed it that way, right? So there needs to be a better education system around what information's within the certificate of origin that can be used going forward by self-certifiers. Because at the end of the day, that critical information in there comes from the traders, it comes from the manufacturers, the issuing bodies just validate that. So that there is definitely a correlation in there. And the other side of it too, yes, you're 100% right. Many of these issuing agencies also obtain fees from that, and going to a paperless solution or a self-certification solution removes that baseline funding for them as well. So that's another factor that you need to take into consideration.
Thank you, Dan. I think given time available, panelists, you have the last chance to pick up one question. We are expecting some quick answer.
Yes. Can you hear me? I saw
yes,
questions
Chinxiao,
here.
go ahead.
Yes, it's related to they are asking, is the panelists from the WCO talk about the WCO tool, and the question is whether that tool facilitates or provides a standardized manner for data exchange. Well, I had just now posted the link of the tool, Interconnectivity Framework for Certificates of Origin. And the intention of the development of such tool is to facilitate members and also provide references and guidance while the members are during the process of implementing the certificate of origin interconnectivity with the other partners for the data exchange for the certificate of origin. I would say yes, these tools is aimed to provide the guidance and the standardized manner in this area. And we will also welcome you to have a look at the tool. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chinxiao. I think given the time available, unfortunately, we have to stop here, but we are going to look at those questions and talk to panelists to see whether we can get back to you. But also, I think if you feel the webinar, the topic is relevant, and you feel there's a need to organize some further webinars, I think we can also think about it. I mean, today is really gave us a bit quick introduction about those guides and also quick reflection on those guides. But hopefully just starting, and I think we can continue our effort. With this, I would like to thank Professor Jisoo Yi and Chinxiao, Nitas, Dan, and Rama for your insight. And it's really, for me personally, it's always a great pleasure to learn from you. I do hope the participants also benefit from your insight today. I think with this, we will close this session, but what we will do is for the participants and every speakers, we are going to have 5 minutes break. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. And once we resume our discussion, we are going to look at the different topic invoice, I think that's invoice. We also have a guide. We are going to have a different group of speakers to share their insight with us. So please stretch and come back in 5 minutes. So see everyone. Don't leave. Please come back in 5 minutes. See you later. I think we can resume our discussion. I hope everyone have a little bit time to stretch. It's going to be a quite a long afternoon. So now we move to the second topic for today. It's also based on the guide that we prepared for under the framework agreement on facilitation of cross-border paperless trade in Asia Pacific. But as we mentioned earlier, that those guides, yes, some part are customized for the parties, but largely they are applicable to many countries worldwide. That's actually the reason why we want to organize this webinar to disseminate the guide, and hopefully that we can inspire more countries to introduce those paperless trade solutions. So now we look at the topic invoicing. I think for invoicing, it's really important topic. I think I probably don't need to emphasize how important invoice is for international trade and also for domestic trade. But by and large, we are mainly focused on cross-border paperless trade. So for this session, we are going to again start with a presentation by Marcus Lobby, and he's the Secretary General of Global Exchange Network Association. Marcus is really the main author of this guide. But in the process, we also get a lot of support from the expert here, especially, for example, Mr. Craig Smith from Paper Authority New Zealand provided really thorough review of the draft guide. We also have Bill Shaw from Singapore. We have Luisa from ICC. She's unfortunately not in the best time zone, and she sent some recorded message. We also have Dava from Mongolian Customs. And finally, we have Ro, and is Open Paper representative in Asia Pacific. So let's start with the Marcus pre-recording, and when the speakers might invite you, please also feel free to introduce yourself to the audience quite briefly. So with this, I would like to ask my colleague to play the video, please.
Welcome to this online session. First of all, let me apologize that I can't be with you live on stage this time, but I hope I will manage to bring the main messages across during this pre-recorded video. While I try to share some slides, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Marcus Laube. I'm CEO and owner of Bilentis, which is a global consulting company focusing on e-invoicing, tax compliance, and integrated digital trade. In parallel, I also act as Secretary General of GINA, which is the Global Association of E-invoicing Service Providers. I also am the main author of this ESCAP report, which is a guide on the adoption of cross-border electronic invoicing that was heavily supported by Tang Fai from ESCAP and a small group of additional e-invoicing experts. If we look at the quite busy slide, apologies again, which I won't discuss in detail, but you can quickly recognize the complexity of the process for cross-border trade related to physical goods specifically. It's different for services, where you have between 30 and 40 different trade documents with up to 25 stakeholders involved in the process, and where we currently see 60 to 70% of that data needs to be re-entered manually. And while the invoice in this process is not a title or a transferable document claiming the delivery, it has still a pivotal role to verify the transaction as such, and also to request a payment. And in this process, there are different forms of invoices, of invoice types, with the commercial invoice being the major ones for the purpose of customs declaration. I won't discuss the other models. And if you look at that commercial invoice, it includes several elements beyond the standard sales invoices, like harmonized system codes, Incoterms, based shipping and payment terms, exporter, importer registration numbers, certificates, and also regulatory compliance information. And that's where you can already see that there is missing alignment between those two areas, standard sales invoices and commercial invoices, and obviously a need for harmonization. But again, if you really want to achieve interoperability, especially on a cross-border level, you need to consider different elements. First, as discussed, it's about technical standards. Of course, there need to be alignment on those data formats, not limited to the content as such, but also on the data format. It also includes data protocols and different security measures, which we won't discuss in detail today. A second area, which might be obvious, is regulatory and compliance. So first of all, obviously, there needs to be a common definition of what is an electronic invoice. And also the same rules for data privacy should apply. And the next one might be surprising, but is crucial to interoperability as well, which is mandatory adoption. As mentioned, this is crucial for mass adoption in a country. And if this is not reached, obviously you can't exchange invoices with your counterparty in another country if they still use different means to exchange invoices. And a third aspect is also not really considered by many today, which I call system alignment, which happens on different levels. So first, you need to make sure that the use of e-invoicing follows a similar model on a national level compared to an international level. And on the other hand, it also needs to be similar for goods and services, which, as already slightly discussed, is different today. And what is also helpful to have is what we call a pre-discovery directory, because if you want to exchange invoices with counterparts, suppliers, buyers in another country, you first of all need to understand where you can address and where you can send or receive those invoices. Such a directory could act as a kind of a telephone book. And last but not least, of course, as service providers play an important role in this exchange of invoices and other documents, there needs to be interoperability between those service providers as well. If we now have a quick look at the different international frameworks, standards, and also tools that have been established, you already can quickly see that there is some kind of fragmentation in the market with different actors and stakeholders around. GINA, the Invoicing Service Provider Association, currently tries to coordinate several of those to achieve harmonization, but still there is certainly a need to have better alignment on a global level. Now, if we have a look at the key models that are used for the exchange of invoices, they can be very different in each country, but Bilentis tried to define 4 different categories that are used in the main countries of the world. So one is what we call the two-corner model. It's the bilateral exchange between supplier and buyer, which can be based on PDF, which is today certainly the method which is used the most. But it's also sometimes based on EDI, which is the electronic data interchange based on structured data formats like XML, EDIFACT, which allows for business automation. The next model is the three-corner model, where service providers come into the picture, which allows to reduce the number of connections, because then everybody has one single connection to the service provider, and then the service provider will exchange the data with the buyer, which is reducing the number of relations. And what is most common today, if you look at the different countries of the world, is what is called the four-corner model, used by PEPL as the most popular example, where both parties, supplier and buyer, each use the service provider, and the exchange of data is then managed between the service providers, called access points, and there is no direct exchange between supplier and buyer. Now, what happened based on the latest developments, including tax authorities into the picture and tax reporting, several countries have established, what is called now the five-corner model, introducing the tax authorities, where a supplier would just send invoice data to the service provider, and then the service provider will manage to arrange 2 different transactions, one to the buyer via a different service provider, but also the tax reporting to the tax authority. And this model, which is used in France, in the Emirates, most likely also in countries like Belgium and Germany, this allows, really compared to the other models, to have both covered tax reporting requirements on the one hand, but also business automation requirements for an automatic exchange of documents. With all these models, what they all have in common is that they don't consider the cross-border invoicing and the cross-border trade, which is a different process. And I just picked the example of Singapore, where you have NTP as a national trade platform, including the different trade documents and covering several stakeholders in the process, like logistics, governments, financial aspects like banking and trade, but also connecting to national single windows, including all different entities in the area of customs and trade regulatory agencies. Now, the challenge is to bring those two ecosystems together and achieve alignment. And that's a proposal from the report to establish what we call the six-corner model, which would then also include integrated digital trade on top of tax authorities, which would make it very simple for both parties, suppliers and buyers, to exchange the necessary information, because they only need one link to the service provider that will then manage the relation to the tax authorities, to customs or trade platforms, as well as exchange the invoice and other documents with the trading party. So based on these different developments and where we are today, we try to define a set of recommendations for different economies based on the maturity level they currently have in the area of e-invoicing. So starting with what we call the tier 1 economies, with a very early stage of e-invoicing implementation, in that stage, the main focus is, of course, to establish core legal foundations to make e-invoicing legal in the country, first of all. What we already included at that stage is to try to achieve mandatory adoption as a very important foundation for all the next stages, including the exchange of structured data formats to allow for business automation from day one. Also, if no other e-invoicing frameworks have been established in a country yet, it would be very important already to align with international developments, especially in countries, neighboring countries, where you have a lot of business exchanges and relations, and obviously the number of invoices exchanged is high. Now, if you pass beyond this early stage and already in the what we call intermediate stage in two economies, at that stage, it's important to include the tax authorities into the invoicing process, which can be achieved, as discussed, by introducing what is called these continuous transaction controls, the tax reporting scheme based on the five-corner model, to allow both tax reporting and business automation. And this can easily be leveraged based on existing elements or existing infrastructure. If we look at the APAC region, for example, where the PEPAL framework is already used in different areas, to add the fifth corner on top of this is relatively easy. And this would already also create benefits for the cross-border e-invoicing, at least regarding the service-related invoices, where invoices related to physical goods need to be still treated differently. And the main reason also at this stage to introduce tax authority is, of course, the contribution that you can achieve by reducing the VAT gap. Looking at many other countries, it has been possible to reduce this VAT gap by 50%, and that means saving billions of dollars by introducing tax reporting and e-invoicing. And that also allows then to move into the next stage, what we call the advanced stage or tier 3 economies, where you can then introduce the cross-border e-invoicing, which is more complex, where you can use the lessons learned from the domestic e-invoicing, where you already established mass adoption for all companies in the country, and which would then allow to link really the e-invoicing with digital trade platforms or customs in your country. And finally, and kind of separately, something you can do from day one and independent of the stage you are in as a country, you can and should always look at regional initiatives and try to achieve regional alignment to establish common standards that are used, look at the different roadmaps, and explore the advantages also of the different operating models. Ideally, even establish a regional discovery directory to really allow global interoperability in your region. And with this, I hope it was a comprehensive description of this report. Nevertheless, if there are remaining questions, always feel free to get back to me or Tengfei for further explanations. Thanks a lot for your attention. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to listen to the introduction to this guide. Now I think I would like to invite the panelists to share their perspective. The same as the previous session. I think I will throw a few questions there, and each panelist feel free to answer any question you feel comfortable. So ideally, if you can have a bit of reflection with the guide, or maybe share some examples, lessons learned, or maybe give some recommendations to the countries, especially some quick wins. So with this, I think first in my list, I want to invite Mr. Craig Smith from Papua New Zealand to take the floor. Craig, you are there?
Hello, can you hear me, Tengfei?
Yes, really
superb.
well.
Last minute technical problems. There's always a technical problem. Okay, so now we're cooking. Well, look, thank you very, very much for inviting me to speak today, because I'm very excited about the release of this, the guide. So look, before I launch into my notes, and I have timed them for 3 minutes, so we'll have plenty of time for the other speakers and for some questions. So a little bit about myself. So yes, I'm the manager of the New Zealand People Authority. And in that role, I'm responsible for the governance of the authority's operations and its accredited access point providers. But I also have a lot of engagement with PEPOL outside New Zealand. So I'm a member of the Open PEPOL Managing Committee, which is its board of directors. I'm a member of its Agreements, Policies and Procedures Change Management Board, and I currently chair the Open PEPOL Compliance Board. But even though I'm the People Authority Manager, I'm actually a policy advisor by trade, and that's an area I'm much more comfortable. So, I have other hats I wear. So I provide policy advice to our Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade on free trade agreements, digital economy initiatives, and general advice around international frameworks involving electronic document exchange. So, I work closely with regional and global bodies, including, ASEAN, APEC, and of course, ESCAP, and I contribute to digital trade and interoperability initiatives all over the world. And I'm also an associate member of the United States-based Digital Business Networks Alliance, and I serve on its policy committee. So as I say, very excited about this guide because it's very much in my wheelhouse. So a few opening comments. So look, today's launch of the guide is very, very important because it gives policymakers something that actually has been missing for quite some time, which is a structured policy-led way to approach e-invoicing rather than very much a technology solution focus to implementing e-invoicing. So I'd actually like to talk about some of the lessons learned from the New Zealand experience, because you learn more from your mistakes than your successes, I think. So to illustrate that point, we moved very, very early to adopt the PEPOL interoperability framework. And ultimately, that was the right solution for us. But we adopted it as a solution before we really defined the policy problem. In other words, we didn't really articulate what we wanted to achieve. Now, was it for productivity gains, SME enablement, tax integrity, interoperability with key partners, or deeper integration into global digital trade systems? And I think over the years, we've touched on all of those areas, because really we spent a lot of time looking for the problem we were trying to solve. But look, because we didn't begin with a well-defined problem or policy project management framework, our implementation lacks some of the clarity and sequencing that sort of later became important. I mean, I hasten to add, we would still have chosen PEPOL, but we would have done it with sharper objectives and a stronger success of what success would look like for us. And that's why this guide matters. It's going to help economies at all stages of development to avoid that solution first trap. It lays out a deliberate sort of maturity-based approach, and it distinguishes clearly between the domestic e-invoicing environment, which traditionally has been around business efficiency, but which is now increasingly becoming tax-centric, and sort of the cross-border environment, which of course is trade-centric, which is what we're here for. So many governments, and I mean, I include New Zealand in this, we tend to blur these two domains. So the guide, it shows why you need policy alignment before attempting technical alignment. Now, the guide also shows that not all economies start from the same place. The tier 1, 2, and 3 maturity model provides quite a realistic pathway from establishing the legal foundations to moving towards structured data and mandates, to integrating e-invoicing with tax reporting, and eventually with digital trade and customs systems. So crucially, the guide reinforces that interoperability is not a feature, but a policy objective. It must be supported by decisions on standards, discovery mechanisms, governance, and how national systems connect into global frameworks such as PEPOL, UN CFAC, and the Digital Business Networks Alliance in the United States. So look, the core message I want to leave you with is this: e-invoicing is not an IT project. It is a policy reform that underpins productivity, regulatory integrity, and seamless participation in digital trade. Technology should follow the policy problem, not define it. So New Zealand's experience shows the importance of getting that order right. So this guide gives every economy in the region and beyond the tools to do so, to define the problem clearly, choose the right model for their readiness, and build an e-invoicing ecosystem that serves national objectives and supports cross-border trade. So look, I encourage policymakers such as myself, I wish I had this guide 7 years ago, to use this guide not just as a technical reference document, but as a strategic blueprint. So it's going to help ensure that the choices you make, whatever solution you ultimately adopt, and of course I like PEPOL, are grounded in purpose, clarity, and long-term vision. Right. I will leave it at that. And I will hand on to the next speaker, and hopefully we'll have some time for questions.
Thank you, Craig. I think it's really, yes, I fully agree that, the technology IT is enabler, and the policy statement clearly about what we want to achieve is bigger, more important than IT sector. Not saying IT not important, but the order is really the policy statement and about what we want to achieve. So with this, we will turn to Singapore. And just before I give to Singapore, I just give a heads up to speakers in the list. And after Singapore, I'm going to move to Mongolia, because I think they may flow better from New Zealand to Singapore to Mongolia. And then I gave to role from Open PEPL in Asia Pacific. Unfortunately, Luisa is in the wrong time zone. She has some recording. We will see how we will play out, depend on the availability with time. So I just give a heads up to the remaining speaker in the session. So Bill, please tell us what happened in Singapore.
Hey, hi, Tenfei. Thanks for inviting me to this panel. And I see many familiar faces, many friends on this panel as well. I just want to provide an update on the e-invoicing initiative in Singapore. By way of introduction, my name is Bill. I run the e-invoicing project office in Singapore. So we are the PEPL authority in Singapore, IMDA, which is the digital agency in Singapore. We adopted PEPL in 2018 when we became the first PEPL authority outside of Europe to adopt PEPL standards. And the policy objective of us adopting PEPL was really to help businesses to improve their efficiency. So just now, I think when Craig talked about interoperability must be a policy objective, that's exactly our starting point. We must start with what is the business objective and what is the policy objective. So in this case, our business objective is to be more pro-business, help businesses to improve their efficiency, and our policy objective is that it must be interoperable because Singapore's GDP, Singapore's trade is 3 times the GDP. So we cannot afford creating our own standards. In the end, we look for an international standard which will allow us to do cross-border trading, and PEPL became a natural choice for that. And a very interesting journey for Singapore is that while we started this journey to improve business efficiencies, but along the way, our tax authority saw the opportunity of leveraging e-invoicing for tax administration. And the way we want to do it is we want to do it at the same time also benefit the business. That's why we have adopted the 5-corner model. In fact, I would say Singapore is one of the few countries who adopted 5-corner model at the national level. And in fact, in February this year, our minister in charge of tax has just announced that all GST registered businesses will be required to use PEPL to submit the invoice data to our tax authority progressively and by 2031. So it is an interesting journey. Our starting point is not about tax administration. Our starting point is about how to help businesses. But in the end, there is a natural synergy between tax and business efficiency. So I will also want to relate back to Marcus' points about the 3 points. One is about standards. So to us, the international standard is very important. Secondly, is about regulatory. It's about the importance of having a mandate. In fact, without a mandate, without a clear mandate with timeline, it's very hard for us to mobilize the whole country, all businesses to move ahead in the same direction. And lastly, about system alignment, about international, this is precisely why we are using PEPL and more recently adopted PEPL International or PINT to facilitate our businesses for cross-border transactions. So if you forget everything I say, just remember that our starting point is business efficiency, and our starting point for policy is the interoperability, and we are doing both using PEPL. Back to you, Tenfei.
Thank you, Bill. Again, it's very short intervention, but a lot of insightful information there. I think I heard the business objective, policy objective, and also Singapore is pioneering the 5-corner model. I think probably the only country I'm aware that you are practicing this 5-corner model. I think over time, Singapore's experience, I think it should be shared more often because we will learn how you do this 5-corner model. There must be a lot of challenge ahead. But again, we do hope that in the future we will have more opportunity to invite you back to us, maybe in a couple of years' time to see how it goes. Thank you, Bill. With this, I want to move to Mongolia. I think Mongolia are apparently different from Singapore or New Zealand, but we also want to hear from Dava. How is the Mongolia experience, Dava? And please feel free to briefly introduce yourself to the audience.
Hey, good morning and good afternoon. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
well.
okay, good. Yeah, first of all, thank you very much, because it's Mongolia, one of the signature part of the cross-border paperless trade among of the 15 countries. But even we exceeded this, then we can just trying to making many achievement of that one. Okay, my name is Tsinsurun Daba. I am working in the Customs General Administration of Mongolia, in charge of Senior Officer of International Relations. Then it's that kind of the very limited time. I would like to thanks for the ESCAP. It's wonderful guidance. Then I also print out that one and reading. Even if we're talking about the e-invoice, but paperless still we have available. Then yeah, thank you, Marcus, because it's wonderful, like explanation, everything is including. And I would like to highlight of the 3 key reflection of the for this guidance. Then first, the invoicing expenditure, very important. As we saw from that guide, there is in annually the 568 billion of the invoices producing, and 22% of them is on the electronic. And regarding of the cross-border e-commerce, the cross-border invoice is just few numbers, 8 to 10%. Then it is very important inside of the there is a ensure the system can work together across jurisdiction without interoperability. Or the previous the panelists mentioned about that one. We risk creating fragmented and digital islands, raising and enhancing the seamless digital trade. The second, we would like to the guide makes very important for distinction between domestic and cross-border paperless invoicing system ecosystem. Cross-border trade, domestic, as we know, it's only focusing on the domestic VAT or many other taxes, while the cross-border trade between the closely, it's linked of the customs and logistic process. It's very important. Maybe when I'm reading of that guidance, just think about that one. We need not only for the limited to all of the invoices. It's including some of the trade billing. They have some of the prices or some of the information is there. This distinguish of the explains why interoperability is challenging, because digitalization is not so quickly is improving. Then third one, it's introduced about for tiered of the manual-based approach, maturity level, and practical paced and pay trace. It's very important for that one. Okay, in this guide, I would like to allow for the few practical lessons. In case of Mongolia, we are from domestic side, e-invoice is very well designing, because customers and government, they would like to moving of all of the solution in digitalization. Regarding of the cross-border paperless, but it's limited. We have limited resources. First, we need to make of some bilateral, even the regional cooperation. Then the legal recognition of the e-invoices is essential, but not sufficient. Because even we introduce it of the lab joint customs control or some document, still we have challenges for the privacy law of for the trading partners. Then adoption of the requires clear standards, incentives, and often paced or mandatory approaches to achieve the scale. At the same time, moving of the structured data formats, critical of the automation and efficiency. However, the transition must be managed carefully and to ensure small medium enterprises are not left behind, where simple or hybrid solution can help. Then in addition, interoperability framework, it's very important, because then including multi-corner models, as I saw from the appendix of the file, they just introduced customs clearance. It's very important. Then it's easily can facilitating legitimate trade. Once we're receiving that one, it's really good of that one. Let me conclude with the few recommendations, just few. Then first, align for the international standards to ensure interoperability. The guidance introduced WTO, the UNCITRAL, and bilateral regional activities. Appendix 1 is perfectly included of the guidance, definition is everything. The second one, adapt of the paced implementation approach that balance ambitious of the feasibility. Then third, ensure of the small, medium enterprise inclusion through the accessible and affordable solution. Big companies very easy can access, because of that they already well designed. Regarding of the small medium companies is difficult on that one. Fourth, we need to strengthen regional cooperation, as cross-border invoicing cannot be achieved in isolation. Then it is very important that quick win, we need to like invoicing public procurement and data standard and piloting cross-border exchange with the key trading partners. As mentioned, because in case of Mongolia, we very active involving, but we still introducing that one. Then as mentioned for the customs tax cooperation guidance at the WCO guidance, how the customs tax connecting, it's really good. We can just have some experience, then we can implement that one. Maybe Mongolia can like raising of some feasibility study for this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dava, for insight. I think you really emphasize the importance of the guide. Try to discuss difference between the domestic and the cross-border invoice.
Yes.
I think I had the pleasure working with experts like you and the Marcus. I've been learning, and not a single moment I dare to claim that I'm expert in invoice. But I feel like a lot of discussion on invoice so far is still very large domestic. But we hope that in the future we can talk more about the cross-border invoice, and also that's actually the starting point for the guide and also the discussion. I think in talk about cross-border invoice and interoperability, I think it's probably the opportune time to move to another speaker role. The role is the Open Paper Asia Pacific representative, and I think will bring a lot of regional perspective to us. So, Ro, if you are ready, you can introduce yourself briefly to audience and take the floor, please.
I am. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope I am clearly hearable and visible.
Yes.
Thank you, Tang-Fai, for giving me the floor and give some feedback on the guide. And also thank you, ESCAP and Marcus, for putting together the guide. As said, my name is Roel Kroijmans. I work in international level on digital trade, e-invoicing and interoperability activities across both domestic and cross-border environments. And I'm involved in developing and all the dialogues around Open PEPL in the Asia-Pacific region. This guide is actually a very valuable contribution, not only as a policy reference, but especially because it helps translate the high-level concepts into practical steps for countries at different stages of adoption. From my perspective, it very well reflects the current reality and also shows us where the main challenges still are. If I can take one key takeaway from this is that it's not a challenge to start e-invoicing. The challenge is scaling it and connecting it across borders. The guide clearly shows that domestic adoptions are progressing, while cross-border remains fragmented and limited. Importantly, these positions are not separate topics, but part of one continuous journey. For implementations experience, I have a few key observations. First, domestic is the foundation. Successful cross-border adoption always builds on strong domestic implementations. Countries typically start with tax compliance, tax reporting, and efficiency, which aligns closely with the phased approach described in the guide, moving from foundations to adoption and then to cross-border. The second observation, there is no one-size-fits-all model. Each country has its own regulatory environment tax system and level of digital maturity. The objective is therefore not to impose a single model, but to ensure interoperability between different approaches. The third, interoperability is a real enabler. As the guide highlights, interoperability is essential. In practice, this means aligning standards, enabling systems to connect, and ensuring discovery mechanisms. Existing frameworks, for example, networks such as PEPL, show that the possibility to connect different national ecosystems without requiring countries to redesign their domestic systems. Equally important, it's in interoperability is the interoperability between different trade networks. That not only country or regions will operate within the same network, not all countries will operate in the same digital networks, but you need to interconnect, exchange data, and establish, and this is very important, trust to be scaling across cross-border and trade globally. The fourth one, cross-border, is a next logical step. The guide clearly distinguishes between domestic invoicing, which is mainly tax-driven, and cross-border invoicing, which is mainly trade-driven. However, these should not be evolved separately. The real opportunity lies in extending domestic infrastructures into cross-border use cases, and further linking it to customs, logistics, and broader digital trade processes. Based on this, I can give some practical takeaways. Use the guide as a roadmap to structure adoption and avoid fragmentation. Second one, start domestic implementation, but design early for cross-border interoperability. The third one, focus on interoperability from the outset, not only technical, but also across systems and networks. And look beyond e-invoicing alone, towards integration into a wider trade ecosystem. From my side, I'm very happy to contribute in this dialogue, particularly sharing practical experience and supporting alignment between countries and regions. In summary, domestic adoption is the foundation, interoperability is the key enabler, and cross-border is a natural next step. And that includes not only connecting countries, but also connecting networks. This guide provides, in my opinion, a strong and practical basis to support that journey. Thank you very much for this, and give the floor back to you, Teng Fai.
Thank you very much, Yo. I think again emphasize the importance that the domestic solution is the foundation, and way forward is cross-border, and we have to bear in mind the interoperability. I think it's a lot of insight for information. Also, thank you very much for the practical recommendations on what countries can do and can utilize the guide as a starting point. So I think we still got the time now. I think I will ask my office to play the pre-recording from Luisa. She's I think in North America time zone is not really right for this, but she kindly shared the video, and she also contributed a lot in preparing the guide. So yes, let's hear what Luisa will share with us. She's from ICC.
Dear colleagues, dear participants, unfortunately, I'll not be able to be with you during this very important event, but I'm really delighted to be nonetheless participating into this important discussion today. My name is Luisa Scarcella, and I serve as the Global Policy Lead on Tax and Trade at the International Chamber of Commerce, the institutional representatives of more than 45 million companies across 170 countries. ICC mission is simple but ambitious: to make business work for everyone, every day, everywhere, by ensuring that global rules and systems enable open, predictable, and efficient cross-border trade. Today, I'm really delighted to take part in this discussion because we're speaking about a topic that sits at the intersection of tax, trade, and digital transformation. The future of tax and customs administration are indeed very timely to be discussed, but also incredibly important in the world of today. I'd like to address the topic of this panel by focusing on different business viewpoints in relation to these topics and issues. The first one that I would like to talk about a little bit is why invoicing matters from a business perspective. As highlighted in the ESCAP guide on cross-border invoicing, digital invoicing is no longer a technical upgrade. It is becoming a core infrastructure of modern economies. Invoicing brings clear benefits: faster processing and payments that can improve cash flow for companies of all sizes, lower administrative costs, greater accuracy and reduced fraud, thanks to also structured machine-readable data, better compliance, and environmental benefits, as we are going through the elimination of paper-based processes. For ICC, these are not abstract advantages. They can really translate, when done right, into competitiveness, resilience, and the ability of companies to operate efficiently cross-border. The second point I'd like to address today is the digital transformation of tax and customs authorities more generally. This is essential. The ESCAP report rightly emphasizes that invoicing cannot be seen in isolation. It needs to be seen also in the context and as part of a broader shift towards digital-first tax and custom administration. For business, this evaluation and evolution is fundamental because it reduces uncertainty and compliance risk. It enables predictable, rules-based environments where compliance is administrable and companies can plan and invest. It supports trade facilitation, especially when linked with single windows, customs automation, and paperless trade systems. And it can strengthen regional integration, which is indeed a key priority for many economies in the Asia-Pacific and well beyond. From an ICC perspective, digital public infrastructure for tax and custom is now as important as physical infrastructure. But that needs to be done in the right way, having in mind what are the challenges, the opportunities, what are customers or taxpayers and operators in the economy really going to experience them with dealing with invoicing and the different systems. And in connection to this, I'd like to address then a third point, which is digitalization alone is not enough. Interoperability is a real challenge here and the real opportunity. The ESCAP guide makes a crucial point. Countries are moving fast when it comes to invoicing and digitalization, but not always in the same direction. And when it comes to users of these systems, there's a lot of problems that come with it. We see a proliferation of national invoicing models, clearance systems, post-audit systems, hybrid systems, and each have different formats, data requirements, and transmission channels. For companies that operate cross-border, these end up creating fragmentation, duplicated investments in the compliance systems, and indeed more generally, significant compliance burdens. These, of course, are particularly harsh for small and medium companies that would like to even increase their operation on a cross-border basis and could be facilitated by digital transformation if done in the proper way. From ICC, the priority is clear. We need really interoperable systems, not just digital systems. Interoperability means many different things, like a company that can issue an invoice only once and it can be recognized across jurisdictions with different systems, data formats that follow international standards, access points and platforms that can communicate with each other, reducing the need for multiple integrations. And without operability, indeed, digitalization risk, instead of becoming an enabler of trade, a barrier to trade. So it is indeed important to see how we can best build these systems in an interoperable way so that digitalization can truly fulfill its mandate to be a real facilitator for trade. And it is indeed not just technical preference, it is indeed an economic necessity because it reduces compliance costs. Companies today often need to adapt to dozens of different systems, as I was saying before, and harmonization would simplify this and significantly reduce administrative burdens so that they can focus really on the business side and how to grow and create jobs. Second is support supply chain resilience, because also from a customs authority perspective, tax authority perspective, the fact that they are interconnected, interoperable can facilitate exchange of information. From a business perspective, where you have global value chains, suppliers, manufacturers, distributors that operate across multiple jurisdictions, having interoperable systems can really ensure continuity and predictability. So it's a double gain on both sides. And of course, having interoperable systems, it also enables SMEs to participate in international trade more meaningfully. And finally, it also enhances trust, because when systems follow common standards, data quality improves, and there is more consistent structural information, both for business purpose when they operate in a more complicated and complex value chain, but also, as I was saying, for tax and customs administration. What we see then as ICC as the way forward. While building on the ESCAP guide, ICC believes that the path to interoperable invoicing requires different things that are already highlighted in the paper and the guide, such as the adoption of international standards that can build global models with a strong foundation, mutual recognition frameworks. Countries should work toward recognizing each other's invoicing system that can really facilitate exchange. Public-private collaboration and information brainstorming exchange is a consultation is truly fundamental. We believe that business expertise is essential to ensure that systems are workable, scalable, and aligned with real operational needs. And then regional cooperation. Regional blocks can play a key role in harmonizing approaches, fostering trade across region. And very, very finally, capacity building. As the ESCAP report notes, many economies still need support to develop digital readiness, and we really stand ready as a business organization or a global network to ensure that there is this dialogue also with the private sector and make sure that really these systems are workable and can be really a trade facilitator as we all would like them to be. To conclude, let me conclude with a simple message. Digitalization is indeed transforming tax and trade, and interoperability can really unlock their full potential. Invoicing is indeed a powerful tool. It can reduce costs, increase transparency, strengthen economic integration. But for companies, especially when it comes to SMEs, to fully benefit of these really important benefits that invoicing and digital transformation bring, we really need to think about compatible, connected, and based common standards. And we fully remain committed to working with ESCAP, governments, international organizations to ensure that digital transformation really delivers on and for all. Thank you very much, and I really wish you a great continuation of the discussion and this important event. And let me really end with a big congratulations to ESCAP for delivering this guidance.
Thank you, Luisa, for the recording. Right now, we heard all the speakers in this session. I'm looking at the Q&A sessions, and there's some question here. I don't think given time available, we can go through all the questions, but we can take a quick look. The first one is about the language. I'm not sure which panelists will be able to share some insight. The question is, what's your view regarding the language used on invoice? For example, a invoice in French is changed with the English-speaking country. Should the customer reject such invoice? I wonder any panelists would like to pick up this question?
I can jump in on that one.
Sure, great.
Look, this is a very good example of deciding what your policy objectives are first. So when I looked at that question, I thought, well, what's the local legislation say? You know, what languages are acceptable? Is it possible to have multilingual invoices? So I would ask those questions first, align with the legislative and regulatory framework, and then there will be a technology solution that will meet your needs. So this is a good example of being very, very clear about what your objectives are. So from a policies perspective, I would say I want to encourage digital trade. So I may think I want to encourage the use of multiple languages because that is part of the interoperability question. So this actually goes right back to the point I was making. Decide when there will be a flexible technology solution that can meet those needs.
Thank you, Craig. Great. We move to next one. It's not okay. It's a question to Marcus, and unfortunately, Marcus is not with us. Talking about the proposed six-corner model, and it's asking whether there's a direct link between the tax authority and the customs. If not, why? And I think for this one, because Marcus is not with us, and the 6-corner model, while I work with Marcus to prepare the guide, I think we actually have a lot of discussion about 6-corner model. It's a new model. I think, sure, the model may be more powerful, connecting different parties, but it may be more costly to build it. So I would rather propose everyone to read the guide, because in the guide, I think there's a lot of detailed discussion. I would not pretend to be an expert here to answer the question on behalf of Marcus, but I really recommend that take a look at the guide. But I think you'll turn on your camera. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, maybe I can shed some light on it. Technically, it's of course feasible to connect also customs to a network as one of the corners. To give an example, as I mentioned, I'm involved in also other international projects than PEPL. And for instance, in the Netherlands, we are currently piloting a model with the Dutch tax authorities and the Dutch customs to connect them straight away to an e-invoice network, so that the tax authorities receive the invoices or invoice data, but also the customs get the invoice and all the documentation they need to clear the products that go into the Netherlands. So it's still a pilot, and that basically would create the 6-corner model. So I can, from a practice and a pilot point of view, I can reflect on it. So technically it's possible.
Right.
And also regulatory, because the Dutch tax authority said, we want to work on this. As you might know, the Netherlands is quite a trade country, so they want to be as efficient as possible to organize that. So when needed, I can reflect further on that.
Right. Thank you very much, Joe. I mean, I said, in theory, it's possible to do it. I think you also share some experience from Netherlands. Really useful. Thank you. Next question is about the GS1. I think it's probably not fair to answer the question when we don't have a speaker from GS1. So I would rather skip that question. And the next question is, invoice system are often designed for tax compliance, not trade facilitation. How to address the link with the custom declaration system or single window to support risk profiling and targeting activities? So this question, I think, from our colleague from Philippines. Is there any panelists who would like to share your insight? So I think this really, I think some speakers already addressed the difference between the domestic and the cross-border. I think from my own humble experience, a lot of invoice issue is focused on domestic issue. And the cross-border, I think probably get started, but I haven't not seen a lot of evidence and actual evidence. I was in the Invoice Summit I think last November, in Singapore. What I heard some panelists say, yes, most countries should still focus on domestic at this moment. But again, I'm not really expert in this. Hopefully some other experts will share more insight. But look at my clock. I'm afraid that I cannot continue this session, finish all the questions. Because we need to stop here and we give every 5 minutes break and then we move to eFITO. But I'm fully mindful that the time is really very, very limited and we really don't have a lot of time for very thorough discussion. But I hope this is really a good start and hopefully that we can have more discussion in the future. So with this, I would like to close this topic. I would like to once again thank all the speakers, including Marcus, Craig, Bill, Luisa, Dava and Ro for your insight and excellent contribution. So with this, again, dear participants, please let's have a 5 minutes break. And in 5 minutes, we come back, we will resume our discussion, then we will going to focus on ePhyto. So 5 minutes break. You have to look at your own clock and come back in 5 minutes because we are all in different time zone. It's very difficult for me to tell what time exactly you need to come back. Ready? Okay, I think we can make a start. It's a very long afternoon. I look at the list participants. I think we have more than 300 participants with us, and I really thank you for patience. But I also hope that you are, feeling beneficial from attending this webinar, this very long one, and learn from the experts. So now we move to the third topic today. It's about electronic phytosanitary certification implementation. So similar to the previous two sessions, what we are going to start with is a presentation by Andy author this guide, and he had a lot of rich experience, especially related to IPPC e-phyto solutions. So Craig is a senior advisor to North American Export Green Association and the International Green Trade Coalition. So we are going to first play the presentation, the pre-recording by Craig. After that, we are going to open the floor. So we are going to have 4 experts with us. So we are going to have expert Jing Lin from Tianjin Customer, China. And then we are going to have Gianluca Nuzzo from the IPPC Secretariat. We also have Francis Lopez from Philippines. We also have Sapasu from Thailand. So Craig, we have 2 options because I see you are live online. So either you can present your presentation live, or we can play your recording, whichever you prefer.
I'll go ahead and do it live, if that's okay. I'll share my screen and go ahead and do live.
Oh, sure. Okay, sure.
Okay.
So just for everyone's information, we invite every speaker to pre-record, just in case if there's any connectivity issue. But if Craig is online, it'd be great. Yes, please.
Yep. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, I think it looks fine to me.
Okay, well, I'll be talking about this guide, which really, I want to emphasize it's a guide. It's not a direct answer. It's a guide of sanitary certification under the cross-border paperless trade agreement. And really, the purpose is to provide examples of possible solutions, but not one size fits all, as we've heard in previous speakers mention with regarding to the other models. But it's also intended to support policymakers to think about selecting different models that would align with their institutional, regulatory, and technical capacities. There's a list of, of an audience members, policy, government officials, customs officials, chambers of commerce, public sector, et cetera. But, it's really intended to be available for people to understand the whole concept. And key to this is the fact that the principles in the document and phytosanitary certification in general, there's an international standard for phytosanitary measures, ISPM 12, with an annex that addresses digitalization. And also the phytosanitary certification digitalization meets the requirements under the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement, Article 7.1, Article 7.9, and Article 10.1, with referencing pre-arrival processing, perishable goods, and formalities and documentation requirements. It's important to talk a little bit about a phytosanitary certificate and why it's important. It's an official document. It's produced by the Exporting National Plant Protection Organization to certify that to an importing country that a shipment of plants, plant products, and other regulated articles comply with the importing country's requirements to keep that ecosystem safe from harmful pests. And critical to all of this, and this is something that's very unique in the context of the IPPC and in the context of what we're talking about with digitalization, the format of a phytosanitary certificate and a re-export certificate is unique, is generic and agreed upon by all 185 contracting parties of the International Plant Protection Convention. What's important about that? Every country sees the same format, sees the same exact information. The phytosanitary certificate and re-export certificate are the only plant health certificates that are used in international trade. So when we're looking at the implementation of e-phyto in various countries, again, not one size fits all, but we looked at countries that had a strong IT capacity, had a lot of resources to build something, had a lot of IT support, had a lot of complexity in developing this, and this would be national systems similar to what is in the Republic of Korea, in the US, where there are national systems. And the complexity is high. Alternatively, when we're developing the e-phyto solution in the IPPC, we looked at something that would be available for developing countries that would be low cost, easy to implement, for countries with limited resources, low trade volumes, but also possibly higher trade in as little as 6 to 12 months. Potentially could include other certifications, and we call this the GENS, or the Generic E-Phyto National System. In other cases, there are direct NPPO to NPPO, such as Chile and Argentina, which specifically apply to bilateral trade, a little bit more difficult to put together. And if another country wanted to engage, they have to come in with their own specific format. Then there's a single window, or the channel, which is something that's used in the case of EU member states or the Central European Free Trade Agreement, which really, there's a regional setup where the countries in those specific organizations have, for example, in the EU's case, traces, but yet there's been a specific channel set up to integrate the traces system with the e-phyto solution. That's one way of looking at it. Again, this is shared costs, but it's also complex and difficult to set up. An alternative to this is the ASEAN single window, which operates for ASEAN countries, but individual ASEAN countries thus far have had to have a separate connection into the e-phyto solution. And then finally, there's a process that was used in the Netherlands, which is collaborative governance. And in this case, government and industry work together to put together a system that works for exchange of phytosanitary certificates. Now, things to take into consideration with doing this, and I want to reemphasize again, the intention of this guide is to prevent people needing to build from scratch. There are already 101 countries, and maybe more at this point, that are already exchanging e-phytos at an average of around 200,000, maybe as many as 250,000 per month. There is no one size fits all. A country should adapt their model to meet their needs and level of development. They could start with a basic web-based GENS model and gradually transition to more advanced models. This is a possibility. And I emphasize that countries should engage with other countries in their region or other countries around the world that have a system similar to the one they're considering. And I'm bringing up the case of Pakistan and Morocco. Both have national systems, but Pakistan was developing theirs after Morocco had already implemented, and they went to Morocco, studied the system, and learned from Morocco. What this means is you don't have to rely on, the US or the EU or other big countries. Countries in similar levels of development and similar processes are countries that you can work with. Things to take into consideration: you have to have the proper personnel, you have to have standard operating, you have to have a working NPPO. Can you store data? Do you need to have it stored elsewhere? Really important, you have to have legislation that allows you to exchange digital certificates. Some countries had to implement legislation to do this. There are some countries that are still working on getting this type of legislation implemented, and it's difficult to have a digital exchange if you don't have the proper legislation. You also have to make sure you have a good infrastructure to do the things necessary to exchange things digitally. You have to identify any barriers to phyto operations, capacity developing needs. There's a that has some resources, potential resource or donors that could help. Implementation. Do you have the support of industry? Do you have support of the executive to put things in place? And can you sustain it? These are really important questions, and I'd like to give a shout out to a former colleague, Peter Namens of Australia, who helped develop this type of a pre-implementation list for the PACER Plus organization. So one thing that I want countries to know that haven't developed this, and even countries that are always being set right now, governance models for the eFIDO solution, hub funding, interoperability standards. These are foundational decisions that have a long life. Countries need to be involved. When developing countries disengage, decisions are made without them. And so my question is, when the rules are written, will your country's reality be in the room? Finally, just in a summary, 101 countries are already exchanging eFIDOs. Up to 11 million, probably 12 million have already been exchanged. And the question is not whether, but how your country will participate. Again, this guide is your starting point. It's a practical, policy-focused resource presenting a range of implementation models, but each is suited to different capacities, legislation, and trade needs. One size does not fit all. And finally, ensure governance, legislation, and infrastructure before you go live, before you even begin. Study these things and know. So my suggestion and conclusion is to review the guide, consult with regional peers or peers around the world that have similar systems, and stay actively engaged with ESCAP and the IPPC. Your country's voice matters, and the decisions that you make will matter for successful implementation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Craig, for introducing the guide, and also thank you for your great effort in preparing the guide. I think for me, it's really personally, it's a great pleasure to work with you in preparing this guide. I think you mentioned something really important. I really want to echo, because it said that, when we prepare the guide, inform the country, don't start from scratch. There's already a lot of tools, guides available. I think this is not only for this eFIDO guide, but when we talk about certificate origin invoice, I think we follow the same philosophy that, for instance, WCO have been doing a lot of work on certificate origin. Invoice, we have, PayPal. So the guide that really add a lot of value. We look at the practice. We group the practice into different models, different solutions. I think we provide some reference for countries to moving forward, introduce their reforms, etc. So once again, Craig, thank you for introducing the guide. With this, I want to invite the four experts, the panelists. Similarly, I'm going to ask them the same question. No, actually, basically, I'm going to ask a few questions, and each expert feel free to pick up any question you would like to answer. So I want you to have a bit of personal reflection of the guide, if you like, or you maybe give us some examples. Asia Pacific in moving forward about embracing digital or paperless solutions on a phytosanitary certificate. So there are a few questions. Feel free to pick up some. And the first in my list is Lin Jing. Ms. Lin Jing is the Deputy Director General from Tianjin Customs, China. So Jing, if you are there ready, please feel free to take the floor.
Oh, yeah. Hi. Hello, Tengfei.
Yes.
Could you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Hello. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm truly delighted to attend the webinar and would like to begin by thanking Mr. Fadchok for his brilliant introduction to the guide. His presentation has set a very clear and practical foundation for us. This guide offers a remarkably practical and enhanced framework for implementing certification. Moving decisively beyond a one-size-fits-all approach. Its core strength lies in detailing 6 distinct models, from comprehensive national system to the lightweight generic, each with clear institutional, regulatory, and technical requirements. I particularly value its emphasis on progressive implementation. The guide recognizes the countries can start with a simpler model like generic e-vitals national system and evolve towards more integrated systems, a realistic pathway that lowers barriers for developing economies. The readiness assessment framework is equally critical, grounding technical choice in governance, legislation, infrastructure, and sustainability by asking whether national laws mandate only paper certificates or whether cost recovery mechanism exist, anchored in institutional reality. Ultimately, the guide functions not merely as a technical manual, but as a strategic tool, empowering countries to make informed, context-sensitive decisions that align with their capacities and trade priorities. So next, I would like to briefly introduce China's progress in promoting the cooperation on electronic phytosanitary certificates. On July 23rd, 2025, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Member States Phytosanitary Mechanism Conference was held in Tianjin, China. During the conference, Vice Minister of General Administration of China Customs held bilateral talks with counterparts from Uzbekistan and also Iran to discuss further facilitating trade in agricultural products. Concurrently, in my capacity as a representative of China Customs, I held specific talks with Mr. Ergashev, Director of Plant Quarantine and Protection Agency under the Ministry of Agriculture of the Republic of Uzbekistan, focusing on the online verification of phytosanitary certificates. These discussions defined the direction for future cooperation. Following the meeting that we conducted multiple rounds of consultations with the Uzbek side on the text of China-Uzbekistan Work Plan for Cooperation on Electronic Certificates for Agriculture and Food Products, and have now reached a consensus on its content. Both sides have agreed to implement the electronic certificate cooperation in several phases, about 5 phases that we have settled down. In November 2025, the Uzbek side sent technical specialists to Tianjin, China for on-site research to prepare for the technical aspects of online connectivity. Both sides have reached a consensus on the feasibility of connecting the eCert system with the eFITO system. The two parties agreed the cooperation documents will be signed by minister-level officials at an appropriate opportunity this year, and the pilot implementation will be carried out at Tianjin Customs. Once the pilot is successfully implemented, it will be promoted to all. In addition, the Uzbek representatives expressed their willingness to serve as an entry point to promote the official online networking of electronic phytosanitary certificates between China and the Central Asian countries. Ultimately, achieving paperless trade in plant products between China and Central Asian countries. This exploration between China and Uzbekistan demonstrates that it is entirely possible for different national electronic certificate systems for inspection and quarantine to interconnect, enabling the sharing and common use of electronic certificate data between systems to achieve the goal of online certificate verification. This would not only reduce the administrative costs for exporting countries and lower the operational costs for import and export enterprises in applying for the mailing paper certificates, but also improve the efficiency for importing countries in verifying official certificates. So, crucially, it would fundamentally eliminate the occurrence of forged certificates. As is well known, Asian countries maintain very close trade relations with China. China is a major importer and exporter of plant products. If China can achieve paperless exchange of electronic phytosanitary certificates with various countries, this will greatly enhance the level of trade paperlessness in the region. Although some Asian countries have already adopted the eFITO system, many others are still using domestically developed systems. The successful case of China and Uzbekistan demonstrates that different national systems can be interconnected with the eFITO systems, and even systems between different countries can be interconnected. Therefore, China is willing to establish links and deepen cooperation with more countries and regions in the field of electronic information exchange, jointly enhance trade facilitation, and promote economic and trade development. We will also take effective measures to protect the security of electronic certificate data exported to China, preventing data leakage, tampering, and misuse. After the meeting, if any experts wish to gain a deeper understanding of the electronic phytosanitary certification matters with China, please feel free to contact me. So this is my introduction. Thank you all. Thanks, Tengfei. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jing. And what is very interesting for me is, both China and Uzbekistan are the parties to the framework agreement on facilitation of cross-border paperless trade in Asia-Pacific. I think this really shows to identify solutions, to share the data, recognize each other's data. I think this is really very, very concrete example. Thank you so much, Jing. So with this, I move to second speaker, my colleague at the IPPC Secretariat, Mr. Guluka Noru. I hope I pronounced your name properly. Apologize if I don't. Please share your perspective with us, please.
Okay, so I don't have a presentation, and I was hearing also the intervention of Craig, my friend and colleague, previous colleague Craig, which was part of the eFITO, program. He is the father of the eFITO. So we are here VC, and we're definitely working, towards the goals that were established in the last CPM. From the last CPM, which was just 2 weeks back, we have seen the need of strengthening the governance, the improvements in terms of change management, reacting to security. We're definitely working in making the eFITO solution more stable, reliable, and give us service to now 101 countries. So it is definitely my honor, and to be here invited, and to basically update on what we are doing, and then I will respond actually to a couple of the points that we are taking. I think it's important for this meeting is that we're having a conversation between UNECE, and so the UNCFACT and WCO, to try to help that sort of alignment. I've been hearing about interoperability even in this last intervention from China. In the moment that we have different communication between different countries, it's fundamental to have the right harmonization package. And Craig correctly said that the good or the success factor is that eFITO is pretty much already defined there as a model. So this could be important for other initiatives around certification. So very important to have that sort of harmonization, and that goes over, let's say, the MPPO to MPPO exchange. It goes also into, of course, customs and other interested authorities. So that is a key, and for that we actually moving the certification. We are just launching a project idea around harmonizing the additional declarations, which is at the moment is very, very difficult, very challenging project as well, because the additional find around the different legal authorities, right? So harmonization there, and also some tools to support countries to be able to write those declarations in a better way. We have seen that most of rejections of certificates are actually formal rejections because the text maybe is not correctly written in the certificate. So that is very important, and of course, eFITO is a multilateral system, and that is the success, because without thinking of a multilateral system into a global perspective, of course, not just a single country, but without thinking this way, you cannot have, I think, a consistent validation tool to leverage the maturity of aligning the different formats. Because if countries will have point-to-point connections, they will adopt the different standards or the different ways of proposing the data into different systems. So I think the other key success is multilateral. So regardless of the technology behind, but that for us is a key success. So yeah, I think I would like to answer also to one of the question in the chat. We at IPPC this year, actually last year, we revised the way that we are supporting countries for their implementation. So we started to look at the the model of having a more 360-degree approach where we are not going to support the phyto only implementation, but rather go into the phytosanitary capacity evaluation, legal agreement, legal framework, include the equipment, and do a more consistent type of implementation. So we are launching actually a project now in Central Africa for 5 countries in Central Africa to do that. So this kind of project will have a more long-term impact into countries. So I think I cover all the points. So anyone in this chat or in this audience that would like to know more, they can contact me. Of course, they can contact. I can write the generic mail that we have IPPC, because we will be able to definitely support and guide countries into the ePhyto adoption. So thank you very much.
Sorry, my bad. I mute myself. So thank you, Juleka, for sharing the perspective. I think we will hear 2 more stories, one from Philippines, one from Thailand. And after that, I think we can all, if time allows, we can also open the floor for more questions and answers. So with this, I would like to move to Francis from Philippines. Francis, how is the experience of Philippines? And also heard Philippines and Thailand been piloting the project. Would you share more with us? You are on mute, Francis. Francis,
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Teng Fei. And thank you, Craig, for the nice presentation. As you mentioned, the guide is really a guide to where countries can start implementing the ePhyto. Unfortunately, the Philippines didn't start in any of those points. When we started, it was the Philippines was receiving the ePhyto. We started with receiving the ePhyto from Australia. Way back in 2018, we started working with them and had implementation of the ePhyto submission or receipt of the ePhyto from Australia. And we were working on this primarily to interface this with our import processes in the Philippines. So the objective are, sorry, hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Jonathan, sorry, can I talk now? I'm sorry. Hello. So I was saying, when we started working on the ePhyto, it was actually the receipt of the ePhyto and how it would align to the automated or electronic processes on our import processes. So what we did was look at how the Philippines can utilize the receipt of the ePhyto, how it will facilitate the import clearance processes, not just for customs, but also for the quarantine processes. So that's where we discussed with Australia on having the import permit, or what we call the SPS import clearance number, as part of the ePhyto certification coming from Australia. The idea there is that if the Philippines issues an import permit or import clearance document that provides the requirements of the Philippines in terms of importing plant and plant products, having the reference number of that document in the Phyto certificate would enable the Philippines to automate the validation of the import permit against the Phytosanitary certification. This would facilitate the validation and verification of documents and compliance with the quality requirements. And so that even before the cargo arrives, they would have looked at the Phyto certificate and made sure that it is compliant. If there are going to be any deficiencies or things that needs to be clarified, then there's still time for the exporting country, Australia in this case, to make some necessary cancellation and replacement of such phytosanitary certification. So having done that, the Philippines started developing the ePhyto as a web-based application. And in this case, it was developed not before the GENS was developed. So we had to develop it grounds up, meaning to say we look at the processes and the workflows and the documents and the legal framework requirements in the Philippines. Having done that, the ePhyto system was developed and implemented. It was supposed to be launched way back in 2019, towards the end of 2019. However, the pandemic stopped us from implementing that. So we were able to implement the ePhyto in the past 2 years. Philippines is now issuing the ePhyto certificate on its own. Now, part of the challenges or part of the steps that we have done, as I mentioned, is really looking at not just on the exchange of the Phyto certificate, not just on the issuance of the Phyto certificate, the receipt of Phyto certificates, but looking into the processes prior to the ePhyto certification and the processes after the Phyto has been received to facilitate import clearance processes. And when we look at the workflows, this may be some of the changes that, or maybe enhancements in terms of the workflow that we're doing with Thailand, is that we want to see a collaboration of exchange of documents. We in the issuance of the import clearance document issued by the NPPO to the importer. One of the requirements is a submission of the invoice, which is coming from the exporter. It's a pro forma invoice. We're not using the electronic invoice model yet, but we're using the paper invoice is submitted as part of the import clearance requirement. So once the import clearance is issued, it contains certain conditions or quarantine measures that may be desired in the importation of such plant and plant products. So by providing the import clearance to the exporter, they would be ready and prepared to comply with the requirements of the Philippines in terms of exporting to the Philippines, including the necessary provisions in the certification that it complies with the quarantine measures that have to be done prior to export to the Philippines. So with that, it's an exchange of the two documents initially. But having said that, we're looking at the exchange of the commercial invoice, the packing list, the bill of lading, or array bill as well as part of the cross-border exchange with Thailand. In terms of integration with other parties, the exchange of Phyto certificates is being done through IPPC Philippines and has joined the IPPC hub for the receipt of the Phyto certificate as well as issuance and sending of the Phyto certificates. We are also, Philippines is also exchanging Phyto certificate with the two countries implementing ePhyto under the ASEAN single window. In addition to that, at the local level, the Philippines and Customs the Philippines Customs and the NPPO, the Bureau of Plant Industry, collaborated in terms of having a portal that provide customs access to all import permits on plant and plant products, as well as all phytosanitary certificates issued by the NPPO for covering exports from the Philippines, as well as ePhytos that are received by the NPPO, by the Bureau of Plant Industry, so that these would be readily available to customs when they process the customs clearance for these products. So those are some of the main points in terms of implementing the cross-border exchange of phytosanitary certification. Maybe in terms of the processes, what I'd like to say is that in terms of the system implementation, the system was developed under a service model. So the private sector, Intercommerce, provided the solution, developed the solution in coordination, of course, with the NPPO, making sure that it is compliant with the requirements under the ISPM and the Department of Agriculture. And there are no investments on the part of government. It is on a pay-per-use basis, wherein the traders would pay a minimal fee for the submission and processing of such permits and ePhyto certification. Another model that we enhanced in the system is that we noted that the possible delays in the issuance of phyto certificate or in issuance of import clearance is the determination of the product itself, whether the product is a Philippine product, Philippine grown or produced plant and plant products, or an importation could be allowed for importation by the Philippine importer. So what was done was a pre-approved list of items for imports or for exports, so that imports that are pre-approved per importer would be pre-qualified, so that when they apply for an import clearance or a phyto certificate, these items, these commodities, would have been pre-approved, so that delays would not be there. The possible manual intervention would be coming in terms of the necessary inspection for quarantine measures when it has complied with the necessary quarantine certification or phytosanitary certification. So those are the things that we have that was done in the Philippines, and we're happy to note that we are progressively doing. We're expanding the number of countries that the Philippines is exchanging phytosanitary certificate, and the recent implementation that we're doing now is with Japan, where in addition to the exchange of phyto certificate, what we're testing now is the use of is the cancellation and replacement processes of phytosanitary certificate with Japan. So I think as a key takeaway, I think what we'd like to look at is that the phytosanitary certificate is a necessary process. It's a necessary document that would be in exchange of plant and plant products, but it is necessary, but it is not sufficient to ensure the facilitation of trade. Having an electronic phyto already facilitates trade, but having the pre-process, pre-e-phyto or the post-e-phyto processes be part of the design of the system or the platform would be more beneficial to the countries. And that's what we're trying to do. And in addition to that, as I said, another alternative or another program that we're trying to do is collaboration, not just between the traders in the Philippines with the government, but also the partnership with or collaboration with traders and people with the trading partnering countries. So in the case of Thailand and the Philippines, we're happy to note that Philippines and Thailand are both signatories to the CTPA, and also we are both under the ASEAN single window, and we are also the National Telecoms and Intercommerce are also both members of the Pan-Asia or PA Digital Trade Alliance. So with that, I'd like to just thank you again for giving us this time to present what we're doing in the Philippines. Thank you, Deng Fei.
Thank you, Francis. Again, there are a lot of rich information there. I think you share experience with different countries, Australia, Japan, Thailand. I think one ticket we have with the e-phyto is part of the solution. And you mentioned the e-phyto is important, but not sufficient. The other, component in the system also will play important role. I think you also mentioned collaboration between Philippines and Thailand. I think this really lend itself to next speaker well. And I have a speaker, Mr. Sapasu from Thai Customs with us. Perhaps Sapasu, you can also share experience from Thailand perspective, how Thailand have carry out the e-phyto solutions. If you're with us, Sapasu.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, can hear you well, Sapasu.
All right, thank you. Thank you, ESCAP, for inviting me to join this webinar. And I'm also pleased that I am the last person, right? And also have almost 200 participants online. So it's very pleased for me that you can wait for until the last person here. Actually, I think that Mr. Francis from the Philippines already explains more things about the project for e-phyto exchange between Philippines and Thailand already. So I think, sorry about that I have yet reviewed the guideline from ESCAP. So, but I would like to share the like the benefit or the implementation of Thailand about the e-Phyto certificate for all participants as a useful information for you. In the future, if you plan to have that one for the pilot project with all the member countries, especially for the CTPA agreement. For the implementation of the e-Phyto from Thailand, I would like to say like we have two ways. The first one is with ASEAN countries, and the another one is for non-ASEAN countries. So in the background of Thailand, we had the opportunity to have the support from the an organization. It's called the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation in Thailand. That this organization work closely with the IPPC, right? So at that time, around 2021, we had the project with this organization together with the political view from Thailand. We think that it is very important for any country if the policy matter can support and can propel any project to see the importance of electronic documents. So this one, you can move forward very fast. The same situation with Thailand. So at that time, we had the project for exchange with non-ASEAN country. So we had several countries at that time that had the interest to Thailand. For example, we have United States, we have France, and Australia, New Zealand, and also Republic of Korea at that time. These were the country that it is have the most volume of the agricultural products with Thailand. So it was the luck of Thailand that we had this cooperation at that time. At the same time, as I mentioned, another way we also had the project with ASEAN because we are ASEAN. So we should follow the things that ASEAN has planned at that time. And you already know that the ASEAN, we have ASEAN single window. We have the plan, annual plan, the strategic plan or AEC blueprint. So we follow that one. One of the documents that we had planned is a Phytosanitary certificate. So we work on these two ways together at the same time. And then we could successfully done the project for both the exchange with non-ASEAN country to IPPC. We also follow the standard that we based on the policy of Thai Customs and also the other relevant agencies in Thailand. We adopt the international standard. The IPPC also recommended the ISPM, right? The international standard for Phytosanitary measure number 12. This is only focused on the e-Phyto certificate implementation. We also follow the standard for data exchange, like a UNC-EFAC that always recommended the very documents that can support for both business sector and government sector, including the e-Phyto that we apply for that one. The same situation as ASEAN. ASEAN also follow the standard based on the agreement and protocol that ASEAN has been agreed around 70 years ago. We adopted the standard that identified by the WCO and UN standard. So at that time, we did the similar thing for the standard to be adopted, and then it's not difficult for Thailand to apply for because this ASEAN standard and IPC standard are similar to each other. So we can just adjust some system implementation, and then we can move forward with non-ASEAN country and ASEAN country all together at the same time. So for our outcomes, the exchange of the ASEAN countries, as maybe the Philippines already mentioned, we have starting the exchange from 2021. Not not that one. Allow before 2021 we start the exchange with Indonesia, and then 2024 we exchange with the Philippines. The same way for the exchange with the non-ASEAN country. Right now we can exchange the e-FITO with the Philippines. The Republic of Korea from 2024. So right now the transaction that we have exchanged with Republic of Korea is more than 100,000 volumes, and the experience that we get from this one is we can compare with the manual process with an electronic process until now that we can reduce the time and cost for the traders, especially the perishable goods. It's very important for our exporter and importer that they can utilize this one without waiting for the manual process, the hard copy of the document. So this one, at least, the goods should be shipped by the vessel, right? But the document can be received in advance. So this is benefit the trader a lot, because the quarantine agencies or NPPO that you mentioned can also receive this information in advance, so they can check the information if is it already correct or meet the requirement of the importing country or not, and then you have the time to revise the document later on to be correct and completed before the goods arrive. So then when the goods arrive, you can create the goods immediately. So this one, the electronic document is a significant useful for electronic document that we can capture from what we implemented. And finally, I think we have only limited time, right, for the explanation. The exchange with the Philippines, we are now under the pilot project, not yet launched the project for B2B e-FITO. We try to facilitate the traders, as I mentioned beforehand, about advanced information for the trader to check if the e-FITO have the same information as the NPPO of recipient country receive. This is important for the trader to check that when they would like to declare this document to the NPPO, they can ensure that the document will be the same information 100%. So this one is necessary for the exchange of e-documents. And in the future, we think Mr. Francis already explained about the full exchange. It's not just the e-FITO, because the e-FITO is one of the supporting documents for Thailand that we would like to also use for the subsequent process for issuing the permit, import permit or export permit. And also the ones that the trader exchange together manually right now are the invoice and also the permit, import permit. That are the prerequisite documents that the trader need to submit to the NPPO for the issuance of the regulatory document as well. So we plan to exchange the invoice and permit with the Philippines in order to support the issuing of the e-FITO later on, because the permit is the ones that appear the information that required to compare with the quarantine process by the issuing agency of the FITO certificate. And we also think, because this morning I also had the opportunity to join the internal workshop for the also covering the CTPA, the cross-border paperless trade agreement. I also share one of the important things that Thailand found the issues for the exchange through the ASEAN single window. That is the key information that we need to be enhanced in order to support the recipient, the importing country, to identify the certain trader who can access the system, the national system. If you use this incoming e-document from the exporting country in ASEAN, the e-document should have the key things like identification to authenticate the specific trader who can access this information in advance. But right now, the recipient, just the government, it might not be fair for the trader if they would like to be share the same document at the same time, because as I mentioned, the trader who be also the owner of the document that need to be submitted to the regulatory agency. They would like to know the information look like should be the same thing. So this one might be the way forward to discuss with the Philippines and other ASEAN countries bilaterally in the future, that we can upgrade the document to support this like a challenge that we found until now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Queen Sapasu. I think very comprehensive coverage. I think the fact that in this session, very interesting that Francis, you speak a same session and, talking about the collaboration between Philippines, Thailand, and you are from Thai Customs, Philippines, Francis from industry. It already shows that government and the industry work together to identify solutions. I think that's really a very good example. I think you also mentioned collaboration with partners. I think you mentioned Global Alliance, Trade Facilitation. I think the same message for audience, that's partnered here. I think we have IPPC with us. And in the chat, my colleague Simon Pidela, I want to especially mention because that's another important partner for ePhyto solution, the Standard Trade Development Facility, supports the development of IPPC ePhyto solution, I think for many years. And it's read that STDF is currently supporting development of similar system for production and exchange or EVET. So the information is there. So I think one message I want to get across is we are here as ESCAP, the development partners, IPPC, STDF are here, and certainly we are willing to work with countries. We may not be able to answer all questions in the chat today, but we are not far from you. If you need the support, need the information, all it takes is just send some message, email to us, and we can explore solution together. So with this, I think the time is up. And soon I'm going to give the floor to my colleague from ICC, DSI, Pamela, to conclude. But from my side, for this session, I want to thank all the speakers, Craig, Jing, Gulaka, Francis, and Kun Sapasu for your insights. I believe that, if you need more answers, information, feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to work together. And to all the participants who stay with us now, before I give the floor to Pamela, just a few things matter to mention because someone sent a question to the chat. One is about the certificate. So for the certificate, first of all, you have to take an online quiz. This online quiz is prepared basically based on the presentation that we have today, and some part also based on the guides. So you need to really have a good understanding of the presentations, and also hopefully you will read the guide and then you answer the questions. So after you take the quiz, you pass the exams, we will send you a certificate. So that's hopefully answer the question from the chat. The second is we thank everyone for contributing to this guide. And today we hear, the key feature of the guide, but the idea of the guide is really the starting point, it's a reference book. We hope the countries will utilize the guide, practice, and over time, the guide is a living document. We hope that in a few years' time, we will come back to update the guide. Maybe we will add more examples, more case studies to the guide, make it more useful. So again, thank you everyone for your participation. I think I leave the closing part to my colleague from ICC DSI, Pamela, to close this session.
Thank you, Tengfei. And thank you, everyone. I was actually only able to dial in for the section on invoice and Phytosanitary certificate because I was in a flight until now. But from what I heard, my takeaways are that whether it's a B2B or B2G document, actually the methodologies for digitalizing and exchanging those in secure format between the relevant parties, they're actually already established. So there really is no kind of blocking reason to get on board with this because obviously for both the participants, in whatever platform and exchange methodology, the more countries that get on board, the better. It helps you diversify your trade, it helps your own enterprises, and so on. So I think with specific regard to the invoice, and this applies to other B2B documents, the critical thing to do is for the government to actually make a choice. Even though you are not controlling the process, you can actually solve the problem of system incompatibility. And when we poll companies on why aren't you digitalizing, the benefit's so clear, it's easier for you, easier for partners. Why aren't you adopting digital certificate, the digital document? The number one reason is one, don't know if it's legal. So for this, it's obviously legal. Number two, afraid of system compatibility in that, they don't want to get trapped into a system where one customer wants platform A, one customer wants platform B, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Government can solve this problem. And even better than making a decision is actually leading by example. So for government procurement, really, really walk the walk. Let your teams actually take the first step. Now, for B2G solution, B2G documents like the phytosanitary certificate, these actually are some of the most advanced where there's a digital document because these digital documents have actually been developed in multilateral process and they're very inclusive. And so it's super clear. The task for the government is yes, you have to participate in the process, but second, you have to drive engagement and education down at the kind of ground level to make sure that businesses know exactly what they have to do with what standard, and then to actually also work with them on getting the additional benefits which come from you interoperating additionally and accepting mutual recognition from other countries. So again, these are really great digitalization examples. Now, if you made the decision, everyone wants to go digital, no one's really opposed to it, but how do you get it done? So the first is yes, please use international multilateral partnerships like the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation. So I may be biased because, ICC is part of this JV, but what I can say is that when we, DSI, Digital Standards Initiative, go into the country, we find, especially in the emerging markets, we find Global Alliance doing really fundamental, technical, like grunt work on standards harmonization, portal connection, implementation of platforms, often for one certificate, perhaps in a section of the government. But the thing is, they get the ball rolling. And as you know, Global Alliance is funded by foreign donors. So their work, you make a request from the developing world, and then Global Alliance can actually come in and really help you. And by the way, trade facilitation, this harmonization process, is actually the building block for moving to the next stage of digitalization of trade, which is really taking advantage of electronic trade records, merging it with the finance process, because when you look at customs, the documents that are processed by customs, almost a quarter of the data processed by custom can actually be reused in the trade finance process. That solves your trade finance gap and it really helps your SMEs. The second thing is check your standards. UN CFAC standards, WCO data model, ISO standards. Now there's an ISO EBL standard. Really go for globally interoperable because that just smooths the path for you. And if you are not using a globally interoperable data standard for one of your key data elements, change it because the longer you wait, the more data you have to interoperate. And although we've had some success with agentic AI, basically, and machine learning, helping to interoperate across the standards families, including national standards and informal standards and formal standards. That's not a foolproof process, although it's getting more foolproof, but it's just another layer, it's another complexity. So get in line with global standards. The last is today's webinar is a fantastic collection of people who want to help. All of the customs and different bodies on the webinar today, they, if it wasn't clear enough, they are ready and willing to be your partner, to interoperate with you, to run the pilot with you, and to give you the benefit of all their experience. So I really think, we're going to load up all of the information and PowerPoints and video remarks and so on the website. And on that website, connect to the people by LinkedIn and get in touch with them if you have any questions with anything they said. So that's kind of my summary. I wish you all the luck with the test and getting your certificate. But thanks very much, Tang Fei.
Thank you. We hope to see each other again. Bye-bye.
Bye, Tang Fei.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.